Welcome to the MotUS Edge, where we celebrate business, primarily youth sports facility management, leadership, and motivation. Co-hosted by Stacy Rowe, Cole Stott, Kevin Brubaker, and Casey Jones. We are here to fill your cup with knowledge, laughter, affirmations, and comfort knowing that you're not alone. You can and will succeed with the MotUS Edge.
Hey, and welcome back to another episode of the MotUS Edge, where we talk about leadership, motivation, and all things cheerleading and dance business. I am Stacy Rowe, here with my favorite co-host, Casey Jones, and our guest today is Jeff Metzger, owner of Kids First Sports in Cincinnati, Ohio. We are so excited to have you on today, Jeff.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, man, it is great to have you. I didn't know who you were until a couple of years ago, and you blessed us by coming up and speaking at our Modus business conference. And I don't know if you remember this, but you and I got to sit outside a little bit after that, and we were chatting. And yeah, man, it's just great to hear all of your success, and awesome to sit down with with a guy that's had you've just kind of been through it all in building. A monstrous facility in youth sports, or youth activities. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, you're incredible. Right. 53 years since I started that business. So yes, you're right. I've been through it all.
Yes. For those of you listening, Jeff has a time turner because although he's been doing it for 53 years, he's only like 35-ish, right?
We'd like to think so.
That's awesome. Well, so one of the things I have always been intrigued about with your story that I know I would love to hear a little bit more about is you were influenced by your elementary school PE teacher, I feel like, right? And so I think that's such a huge story to kind of hear. And I want to learn more about it because I think that we have so many coaches in our line of work, that they don't realize. I mean, your elementary PE teacher, you're talking about this person after all these years still is somebody that you talk about that influenced you and your leadership and just kind of how you did things. And you were a kid, like you were a young boy at that time. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we tend to forget as teachers sometimes, and it's good to be reminded how important our coaches and teachers can be, how influential they are in our lives. Yeah, Whitey Moore. His name is John Moore, and his friends called him Whitey, and so did the students behind his back, but certainly not to his face. He was quite a disciplinarian. And I remember this was elementary school, and when I was in the 4th and 5th grade, I sure wanted to be in Whitey Moore's homeroom class because everybody knew that Whitey Moore threw the biggest parties because it was evident because, as we were in 4th and 5th grade, we got to rotate into the gymnasium for our gym class. And we saw the tables of cupcakes and cookies, and it was a party beyond all parties in the school. So everybody wanted to be in Whitey Moore's homeroom. And I was one of the chosen one of the lucky ones. And I remember he sat us down and he made the point. He said, everybody knows that we throw the biggest parties here. What I want you to know, kids, is that I don't do that. You do that. So you've got to decide right now, do you want to throw a big party or not? Because if you want to throw a big party, it's completely up to you, is whether you rally your moms or dads together to get the cupcakes and the cookies together, but it's your choice on that. And there were so many other lessons that he taught us about that where we are in our lives, our state of affairs, our happiness and our unhappiness, it's all a choice. And boy, that really hit home with me. And I had great parents, but for some reason, Whitey's approach to that was just really hit hard. I remember, and he said, "I will never tell you what to do as your teacher." He says, "I'll explain very clearly what the consequences of behaving in this manner or this manner or this manner might be." He says, "But how you behave is completely your choice." And so that really really hit home with me. And Whitey lived up to it. I mean, the consequences of a certain type of poor behavior where it's going to be in that era was going to be a SWAT. And so people understood that. And whenever there was a SWAT, it was always done, if you will, with love. As a matter of fact, he used to draw with chalk a heart on his paddle, so that after he did SWAT,
Love it.
typically to a guy, I don't remember any of the girls
His
getting
paddle.
SWAT.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah. And so it would leave a heart on his bottom after he gave that SWAT. But it was never with it was not with animosity, no frustration. It was just simply, here's the behavior, here were the consequences. You chose this action. Let's go, suck it up, take your SWAT. And people did. And he was the best, by far, the most, when I get emotional, influential teacher I ever had. And many other people would say the same too. Some years ago, it was probably now 10 years ago, I ran into Whitey at a breakfast restaurant. And I wasn't sure it was him. I walked up to him and said, "Hey, do you happen to know Whitey Moore?" And he said, "Well, it depends on who's asking." So we had a great conversation. And I said, "Well, you're never going to believe what I do and what my career is." And I took him over to Kids First, and we spent 4 hours walking around Kids First, just talking about the old days. At this time, Whitey was, I believe, 85. And it was just a delightful day. And after that, I organized kind of a tribute dinner to Whitey, and we had people from as far away as Hawaii and Alaska come for this tribute dinner.
That's a pretty incredible
cool
story. And it's incredible that at such a young age, you could soak that in. I think back to myself at a young age. I'm not sure I was soaking in anything, Like, I didn't have those, I didn't have those abilities, it seemed like. But I really love what you said about, choosing your happiness or your unhappiness. That is something my dad breaks it down on a day by day basis, and he taught me, it's like, whenever you're having a bad day, you can instantly, just through the power of thought and the power of choice, you can change your day at any time. And I think that's, I'm glad you brought that up, because, now's a stressful time of year for the cheer folks. So it is easy to kind of get bogged down in that. I know a lot of our coaches and gym owners right now, we run the gamut of end of season events, followed by tryouts. And these are the times where people are like, we can have enough kids to pay the bills next year. There's stress, but, if you don't process that, you don't have a way, and you don't have an understanding of, like, man, I can choose to be happy today and enjoy in those, in the day.
That's such a valuable lesson for children, or adults for that matter, to learn. And kudos to those parents and teachers that take the time to stress those kinds of thoughts to the kids, so that that becomes just their way of life and their way of thinking. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is. I was kind of having my own little personal spiral meltdown last night, actually. And my husband was like, "You need to just take a breath." Right. It's like, you need to take a breath.
I hope it wasn't over this podcast.
No. It was like just all I was trying to do was watch my son play some soccer, and my phone was just blowing up with one thing after another, after another, after another. And there were things that I felt like, could I have said, like, I'm going to blow you off and not respond? And yes, technically, but the people were like reaching out to me. They were very much like, I need what I'm asking you for, like, right now. And it just happened to be several in a row. And I was like, I just want a minute. And so I got very frustrated. And my husband was like, "Just put your phone away and take a breath and just be here in the outside and watch your son, and it'll be fine. Like, it'll all wait." And so it is so true. And I find that, when I wake up on the wrong side of the bed, everything that day, it's like I rip my shirt, I bump my head, I stub my toe. It's just one thing after another, after another, after another. And I'm crazy enough, when you can change your mindset, all of a sudden those things like stop happening to you in that same day. It's really something, the power of the mind, I think.
It is pretty wild. The power of the mind, the power of different things and different activities and nature, and then obviously for me, God. But I had one of those God moments yesterday. I had a day too, and it was, there was just a lot of stuff and a lot of challenges and challenge.
I'm glad I didn't call you then, Casey.
And it was pretty crazy. But then, at 5:30, I sent a text to my daughter and I was like, "Hey, are you going to this softball game?" Her husband and one of my boys play in this adult softball league, and she was. And I was like, "Well, hey, let's meet up and let's do this workout." Before we went there, and we were literally over at Kennesaw Mountain, beautiful area, state park, actually national park, I believe. But, we did this hour-long workout, outside on the side of a mountain, and it was beautiful and 78 degrees. And, God just showed his glory right there. And my whole, like all the things I was dealing with went away. And there was an appreciation of being able to spend an hour with my kid doing something that we both love to do, and then all those things that had been weighing on me all day long that I chose to let weigh on me, just crumbled away in an hour, and then they came back about 3:00 this morning when I woke up to think about them, but they were there waiting on me.
Letting go is a practiced art that I think we all can benefit from working on. It's not, I've said often around our place as I'm mentoring or counseling somebody, it's not how much you can pack in the day. It's it's the things that you choose to let go of that matter. So letting go. So Stacy, are you tied to your phone often? Is that
too often, unfortunately. I am working on that. I did finally just this last year start setting, what do you call it? I have do not disturb. So I have do not disturb on my phone until I think it's 8:00 in the morning. And then at 9:00 at night, maybe it goes on do not disturb in the PM as well. So I don't then I've never done that before until the last year.
Good for you. That's a good start. Yeah. Have you started down the path of helping the others make the decisions that they seem to be scrambling for you to make?
I do that. Well, yes and no, but I do need to do more of it. And I think so in full transparency, I feel like I do understand the importance of that. And I do it often. Casey can tell you, it's like, hey, I need the link for this, or hey, I need this, or hey, I need that. And I'm like, well, it is here. Like I will send it, but I'm like, you can find it here so that they learn over time. But I've started a lot of new businesses. And as you know,
Stacy's trying to train the guys in her life.
When you do that, when you start new businesses, you have a lot of people to train. And so it's been a lot of training for the last little bit here. And every time I feel like, okay, I've got this person good to go and they're off and running to the races, we do something new and we grow again. And then I've got to train more people. So I feel like that's just kind of I've been on this hamster wheel for the last couple of years of trying to get everybody to that point, Jeff, because I very much am Cole and I talk about this all the time. One of the things I feel like that we have been able to truly learn and get good at is, we have multiple locations. I can't run. We've had sometimes we have 8 facilities right now, but we've had over 20 at one point. I can't run 20 facilities. You have to do your job. You have to know how to do your job. The hard part about that is watching people make mistakes and allowing them to make those mistakes and then helping them through those mistakes. That's hard. That's hard to do. So I try to be really good at that, but we have just been doing so much so fast and there's so many people to train to get where we need to be that I feel like I am constantly
Gosh, I'm sure Jeff can probably relate to this a little bit.
Oh, I've heard of the story. I've heard them all. I know exactly where you are.
That's the thing of I am not good with the boundaries. I'm not good with the phone. I'm not I feel like I'm always connected 24 hours a day. It is a choice because I'm I'd rather deal with it now than think about it all night and deal with it tomorrow. But, some of those things, my family sacrificed, my kids sacrificed, my wife sacrificed while I was, especially in the early years of building a business. Now that my daughter has come into the business, she lived that. She saw it. I would have those conversations with her of I have made these choices. I'm not sure they're the right ones. I'm not sure that they're the best choices. Grace of God, they've paid off and we're where we're at. But you can do it a different way. You don't have to do it the way I did it. And as she graduated college and came into the business, I would find myself sometimes getting frustrated because I'm like, man, it's Sunday and the toilet's overflowing and Emily's nowhere to be found. And I still got to go deal with this toilet and this instructor's upset and this person and Emily's nowhere. Well, Emily doesn't work on the weekends. She listened to me and set those boundaries and like, it's going to be okay. Somebody's going to fix that toilet. Currently that somebody's me. But, once again, that's what I chose. But I found myself kind of getting frustrated of like, well, she's not putting in the 20-hour days like I did, and then I think back to, yes, at the expense of those that loved me, during those times,
you pay for that.
Yeah. So,
yes, you pay
so
for that.
I had to have another talk with myself and like, hey, dude, she's doing what you told her to do. She actually set some boundaries. She actually, it's tough to get her on her phone after 8 o'clock at night. Somebody else who I feel like is good at that. One of our partners, Cole. After about 6 o'clock in the afternoon, he shuts it down, and I feel like that's when I'm hitting my stride. Like that's when.
But here's the thing, though. Cole and I have worked together for, he likes to say 20 years, but it's really actually almost going on 30 years now. That's how old we're getting. And I have always been there to answer the phone calls that come in after 6 p.m., which is why he could shut his phone off at 6 o'clock. So I'm like, all right, buddy, who's my person that's going to answer those calls so that I can start turning it off at 6 o'clock. But no, he is really good about that. And in fairness, I feel like it's kind of why when I was young, I stepped up to like, okay, well, this problem needs a solution and you ain't going to get him on the phone. So, I got to handle it. And then I kind of became that person.
Well, the real trick is when the calls don't come in at all, and you don't have to set those boundaries from a time standpoint.
I agree. So teach us, Yoda. Teach us, oh wise one. How do we get to that point?
Well, okay. It's not a simple formula, but one important piece of the formula is what you mentioned, Stacy, and that is mistakes. The ability to allow people to make mistakes and watch it happen, and knowing that person is getting the greatest education of the entire operation on that day.
So hard.
They're suffering through that mistake. And I say suffering, mistakes are painful. So I'll stick with that word. They're suffering through that mistake and struggling through the patch or the fix on that mistake. And that's when learning happens. I can't help but not share a story that I heard long ago, and I assume it's true, but I wouldn't swear to it. But Tom Watson was the founding CEO of IBM, and one of his regional vice presidents made a huge strategic blunder that cost the company millions of dollars. And after this, the conversation ensued. And at the end of the conversation, the vice president said, "You mean you're not going to fire me?" And Watson said, "Fire you? Why would we fire you? We just spent millions on your education." So when people make mistakes and then struggle through the fixing of them, that's when true learning happens. And the trick is, though, from a leadership standpoint, in my mind, is to not just know, but visualize and fully, deeply know the difference between a mistake and irresponsibility. The mistake is when one goes about making a decision or doing a thing and taking an action, believing that the consequences, that the results are going to be desirable and it's going to move us forward and be good for the company. It's when a mistake is not when someone should have reason to know that what they're about to do, the actions they're about to take, are likely to bring undesirable results, yet one goes ahead and does that anyway. That's called irresponsibility. A mistake is when one believes that what they're doing is going to bring pleasant results. And so that leader has got to know right now, because that definition has got to be, internalized. And when that's internalized, then and when something goes awry, whether to give applause, which is what happens when somebody makes a mistake and fixes it, or to have a different kind of conversation and say, that's irresponsibility. Yeah. We can't have that here.
Or, hey, we've made this mistake now 3 times. We've done the same thing over and over, and we're expecting a different result. That's the definition of insanity.
I'll tell you a story. I went to work early one morning, and our HR person, her name was Sherry at the time, was there. And we were maybe the two first people in the office. And Sherry says, "Hey, did you hear about Susie on the news? One of our teachers, young teachers, is a high school student, and she and a handful of high school students were caught with drugs. It was cough syrup and the like. We're not talking hard drugs. Well, they happened to make the news." And so I thought, oh man, my heart sunk. She's a good kid. My heart sunk. And I said to Sherry, and this is very unusual because we are very decentralized. So understand that this is out of the norm. I said to Sherry, I said, "You explain to Susie that she is no longer employed at this company." And which is, I know it sounds draconian, but it just felt right at the time. I said, "You explain to Susie that she's no longer employed at this company. And if she would like to be considered for reemployment, the only path is through my office. I wanted to talk to her." So this wasn't a hard line. This was an effort to have a conversation with Susie. Now, we're very decentralized. So she wasn't, quote, my employee. She was one of our department leaders' employee. And so I just a day or two later, I got a very timid phone call. "This is Susie. Could I set up a meeting?" And I said, "Certainly." So we set up a meeting for the next day, and Susie walked in and she looked like she'd been through the ringer. I said, "Has it been a tough few days for you?" She says, "Oh yeah, man. I talked to my counselor, my pastor, my parents, teachers. It was really." I said, "Did you knew that this could be a problem for you, right?" She says, "Yeah." She says, "Man, I wish I'd done it. I'm so sorry." We went on and I talked to her, not about the evils of drugs or any moralistic discussion. I started talking to her about what mistakes and what irresponsibility was and the distinction between them, just as I went through. And so Susie listened, and it was a good conversation. And so at the end, as things were beginning to wind down, I stood up and I said, "Well, Susie, I want you to know that I'm going to recommend you for reemployment with your department leader." And she says, "Oh gosh, thank you, Jeff." And she was walking out and she says, "I just want you to know I'm never going to make that mistake again." I said, "Come back here, sit down."
You said you probably are.
It's not a mistake. You knew the consequences of this could be dire, and they were. This is not a mistake. You engaged in irresponsibility. This is not a time to waffle in your own mind. This is time to be clear in your own mind. You chose a path of irresponsibility. You suffered the consequences. You've worked your way through it, and now you've got blue skies ahead. That's not a mistake. So I was very, very clear with Susie. It was some months later. I get emotional on this, and she called. She said, "I just want you to know that was a turning point for me in understanding what I'd done." And so it was a little risky to say she's not employed, because if she had never made that call to me to set up that meeting, I don't know whether I would have called her or not. That's possible. I hadn't even thought that through. But yet it was a little risky, the path I took, but it worked out very, very well. She ended up to be a teacher for us for many years, and has gone on to do great things in life. So.
Such a great story. And it's just what should be done in the lives of youth, and I say that all the time. Like, man, I expect young people especially to make mistakes, and then it's how do we guide them? How do we lead them out of those mistakes? And like I said, just your way of putting that is,
Agree. The difference between mistakes and irresponsibility, I think that's tremendously valuable. And I think it helps accept ownership. A mistake kind of takes ownership and puts it elsewhere. Irresponsibility says, I am accepting responsibility for this action, and I was irresponsible. I was not responsible. That it helps them accept responsibility. And in today's day and age, I feel like, especially with young folks, they struggle. And I think parents struggle with allowing kids to accept responsibility for their actions. They want to make them feel better, and so they don't allow them to accept responsibility for their actions.
You shelter them from it. Then at some point you don't have the ability, and that's when it's really bad.
Protect your children from the consequences of their mistakes is one of the worst things we can do for our kids.
100%. And I think that is an invaluable lesson for coaches to learn as well.
Oh, yes.
That you have to hold your kids responsible and accountable for, for those things. And going back to your PE teacher, it's the information on the front end. I think where coaches make mistakes is they get emotional because they're angry that something has happened multiple times and they snap and, well, now this is going to be the punishment. Well, why all of a sudden now did we decide that this is going to be the punishment? The punishment should be laid out clearly in advance. Like you knew as a student what you were going to get a SWAT for. So you either didn't do that action or you did. And when you did, then the SWAT happened. And that's, I'm not saying we should SWAT the children, but what I'm saying is, I'll use an example. When I was coaching, my practice started on time. And on time meant you were there 5 minutes early, ready to go, like dressed and ready to start your activity, whatever the title is called, 7 p.m. If you're strolling in at 7 p.m. and you don't have your shoes on and your hair isn't up and you're not ready to go, then you are late. Even if you're in the building at 7 p.m., like you're not ready. If you're sitting on the floor putting your shoes on at 7 p.m., you're late. And they would have to run several laps around the gym. And I would explain to the kids, like, that's the rule. It's not because I'm punishing you with running. It's because you're going to be missing whatever warm-up activity the rest of us are doing because you're busy getting yourself together. And it got to the point where the kids just knew if it hit 7:00 and they were not on the mat, shoes ready to go, like they just started running. I didn't even have to talk to them about it anymore or tell them. And it wasn't like she doesn't like me, she's not being fair. It's just, that was the rule. Like
what it was.
It just is what it is.
A consequence, not a point. There's a huge difference, and parents.
Consequence. You're right. Correct.
Oftentimes, parents, coaches, teachers, law enforcement oftentimes forget the difference between punishment and discipline. And with kids, with students, youngsters, employees, one of our teaching principles is to discipline with natural consequences. All right. So the natural consequences of being, let's say, antisocial is to not be part of the group for a period of time. So whatever the natural consequences are, that's what the discipline should be. And Casey, to your point, with our kids, it's speaking with our children long before there's any kind of infraction about the consequences of particular types of behavior, and not after an event happens.
Right.
Then now our emotions are them, but it's before it ever happens. Just say, hey, people who choose this path tend to have these types of lives and these types of consequences, etc. That's the answer for children, is to make sure they understand. Athletes, on your team, or your employees, to make sure.
I was going to say children and adults, to be honest.
What the consequences of their various behavior paths are, and that's what
try to let them know before it happens. That's an important. You can't always, because as soon as you plan for, I plan for everything.
Calm, that's right.
But if they know the consequences, they know before it happens. Interesting that you brought this up, Stace, because this is something we were debating in our management team the other day. And goodness, Jeff, this will probably make you cringe here, a breakdown of a system that we have. But we're 25 years into this, and we have 40 plus teams at our gym. Close to 100 coaches, and we have allowed the coaches to kind of set many of their own parameters as far as attendance, tardiness, and things like that. And yesterday was eye-opening as to why we should continue to do that, because we were talking, and we have these youth age kids, and mom is driving them, and hey, this mom is chronically late, and one of the things I always said, like, well, if you allow it, if you allow them to be 10 minutes late all the time with no consequences, then they are no longer late. You have just that's what it is. They show up 10 minutes after, and that is they're on time.
Yeah.
But, so one of our new directors was like, I feel like we needed to reel this in, and it needs to be fit across the board for everyone. The rules should be the same for the kids on the youth team as they are for the kids on the World's team. And then one of the other directors brought up a great point. He's like, I'm just not okay with that. He's like, I have a team full of 16-year-old drivers that are out on 285 and on 75. And I have he's like, there is not a single practice that we go through where I'm not getting a text from a kid that, hey, traffic is bad. Hey, I left school. I left school practice as soon as it was
You don't want them
done.
rushing.
And he's like, the last thing I want to do is tell a 16-year-old that they need to haul butt down 285 to get here on practice because they're about to get 50 burpees or whatever.
Or
And
you hit a hot button with me, and that is it's a classic argument that I think that all business owners need to continually wrestle with, and that is the benefits of being centralized in decision making versus decentralized in decision making. And I think it's a wrestling match, and I am an avowed decentralist, so I applaud that coach that said, wait a second, that fits for this group, but it doesn't fit for that group. The one size fits all, the 3 strikes and you're out, and it's in black and white, and that's it. Approach to life is I think that's those types of approaches are done by black and white thinkers, that either black and white thinkers or lazy thinkers, that they want some black and white rule for how to handle this situation. Or when this happens, and black and white, life's not black and white, and it doesn't work best.
Everything's different, like Stacy described, and I don't know exactly her town, but have it like our Cartersville gym that has 2 traffic lights in the town, and everywhere is 10 minutes. Then there may never be a reason to be late, a good one. Whereas in the metropolis of Atlanta, where I'm navigating, 3 highways and an inside and outside perimeter, where almost every kid's driving an hour.
Well, and to be clear, it really just kind of became an understanding, like, if there is a situation like that, please don't rush to get to practice, but you're still going to run the laps because you weren't here on time and you need to warm your body up before you start practice. So there was zero, like,
how it's approached. Yeah,
correct. And I think one of the things that is interesting about all of this conversation that we're having, and I don't know, Jeff, if you have any insight on this, but, as I think this is where a lot of gym owners struggle, but even, Cole and I talk about this a lot too. All of these things that we're saying, I feel like are accurate and true and important. I have found over the years in training managers and directors and coaches, it is one of the hardest things to teach people to have that communication, to do it well, to not be afraid to have the communication, to not have, to be willing to have the hard conversations, but do them in a calm and, intelligent, objective manner, a fair manner, set the emotions aside. That is one of the most difficult things I feel like to teach and for people to learn, because obviously there's a lot of emotion involved. I am an extremely, to a fault, I am an extremely logical human being. So that type of thing I don't want to say it's easy for me because it's never easy, but it's always been a little bit easier for me because I'm very logical. Mm-hmm. People who are highly emotional are like nails on a chalkboard to me, because I am like, if there's a spectrum, like I am way over here on the right, and anybody that's super emotional is way over here on the left. Like my husband calls me a robot because he's like, you just, and I'm like, I have emotions. Like I definitely do. You've seen them, but but it's hard.
Left brain all the way, aren't you?
I mean, I have taught hundreds of people, trained hundreds of people. And that is one of the hardest things I feel like, because it's people have, I don't want to say, I think you can learn the skill. You 100% can learn the skill, but it's so tied to your personality. And so how do you do that?
That's the conflict though. And maybe conflict isn't the word. That's the challenge between systems versus, being able to do things or being able to allow to work within a system, and like I said, I'll revert back to many coaches, so early on in this, I was like, oh, this is simple. Like, let's identify the best coach in the gym, and whoever's the best coach, then if everybody just coaches like him or her, it'll be fine. All the teams will be great. Boy, was I wrong. That was a miss. And, and for a long time, we were like, we're going to get everyone to coach like this. And then I realized, that coaches, teams, organizations, they do themselves best, so like, I use this example all the time. One of the big, well-known gyms in all-star cheerleading is Top Gun. No one does Top Gun better than Top Gun. And if we set out to become Top Gun, at best we'll be as a second-rate Top Gun, because we're never going to out Top Gun. So we need to be Stingrays, and we need to do our thing. Well, then you break that down to within the gym, and it's the same with the coaches. And we've worked really hard to create systems, but create systems that allow coaches to coach with autonomy, so that they can have a different set of rules than maybe other teams in the gym. What's important to me is that the parents and the athletes are not surprised. So from day one, you put your rules and your expectations for your team out there. And if you've done that and you've completed that, then I'm always going to have your back as far as, when we have to have those discussions. If you're removing an athlete for attendance or tardiness or anything like that, shouldn't be a surprise to them, because you set your standards that work for you as a coach up front. So
I agree 100%. And there we're into this centralized, decentralized argument to some extent there. The way that we look at that and the way that we solve that problem or that challenge that everybody has. So this is not unique to your operation or mine or Stacy's. Everybody has that same challenge. It is how much to decentralize, how much to centralize, and how much to decentralize. What we have, and I'll go to what we call our first hiring mantra. We have 5 hiring mantras. And the first one, they're called mantras because rather than hiring disciplines or hiring principles, they're called mantras because originally there was only one hiring mantra. That's when all the hiring was centralized. I was doing all the hiring, and I created a hiring mantra because of mistakes that I made. And the first hiring mantra is hire the character, train the skill. And so that was first one. I won't go through the others. The others came about because of hiring mistakes. But the point on that is hire the character. When I say hire the character, when we say hire the character around our operation, we're not talking about a generic version of character, which might include things like honesty and integrity and hard work, because there's more to the story. When we say hire the character, we're saying hire those people that are innately aligned with our core value system, which is really another topic. We have 7 unifying principles. Hire people who are innately aligned with our core value system. And when they are aligned with that value system, then get out of their way. Let them make their own rules and decisions and methodology that's unique to their team and their kids and their particular situation and the age of their athletes, whether they're driving, and all of those things. If you're not aligned at this foundational level that we refer to as character, more specifically our 7 unifying principles, now everything else stops, and we've got to then fix that malalignment. Once we're aligned at the foundational level, in line with our 7 unifying principles, then in theory, anything goes. Now go about I've had people say to me, matter of fact, interestingly enough, multiple times, and say to me, Jeff, I remember hearing you 5 years ago or 10 years ago when you said, hire the personality and train the skill. I said, wait a minute. I never said hire the personality and train the skill. I said, hire the character and train the skill. There's many different personalities that were great as coaches. There's very conservative personalities that might be a great coach. And there's wild and crazy personalities that might be a great coach. All of those can coexist if we're aligned at the foundational level, which for us is there's 7 unifying principles there. So that's how we look at that.
This is, I don't know, I'm blown away right now, because we literally had a meeting yesterday and then this podcast this morning, and it's almost like the meeting got pushed into the podcast to talk about those things, because we were having, it wasn't the exact words, but communication is huge for us. And one of our directors, we're hiring some coaches for next year. And she made a statement of like, we need to hire people that communicate we have the ability to teach them how to teach a back handspring. We have the ability to teach them, but
if they don't have good communication skills, we
don't have time. Like if they can't have a conversation with a parent in this, because the thing, we're going to hire them and like, here's your team, go, So
to interject, the third of our 7 unifying principles is forthrightness. Say the tough thing, be direct.
Saying the hard things is so important. And I think, people, I have always felt like people take that, when you are the person that has to say the hard things, it hurts your heart. And so that creates a wall from saying the hard things sometimes. But I really think that if everybody thinks deep about it in their soul, we all crave that genuine, honest feedback. And we know that genuine, honest feedback is what helps make us better. And think back in your life, how many people have you come across that have genuinely given you honest feedback? It's so few people, because so few people have the courage to do that. And it's so important. I mean, I remember as a coach begging people to review my routine and tell me what I needed to do to fix it so that I could be better. And 99 out of 100 people would say, oh my God, it's so great. It's so fabulous. You guys are wonderful. Yeah. And the one person that would actually be like, actually, it doesn't land for me right here in this part and your timing's off, I would be like, yes, thank you so much. Please, I want to talk to you all the time. Like, keep giving me that feedback, because the fact that you're patting me on the back and telling me I did a great job is doing nothing, because you know what? I go and then I fall short because you're telling me I did such a great job.
One of the subsets of that third principle of forthrightness is set aside tact. Tact gets more companies in more trouble. Set aside tact and impose equal parts respect and candidness, okay? And get to the tough message. Tact kills. Now, I'm not saying be bold. I'm not saying be harsh or cruel. I'm saying that includes being kind.
Kind.
Yep.
Equal parts respect and a candid, straightforward message.
I love that.
So when respect is there, tact is not necessary.
I'll never forget.
Tact is what you staple on when that genuine respect is a little bit absent.
This strikes a chord. One of my biggest weaknesses. I am a people pleaser, a little bit of a politician, trying to always work the system there, want to keep everybody happy. And I learned this years ago, and it wasn't even my interaction. It was watching Sherry Cooney interact with one of our directors. And Sherry, a great coach, had built a great program, at West Georgia. And then her daughter came through our program and we asked her to help. And we were dealing with, alternates, and like, how do you tell somebody that they're an alternate? How do you do that? Well, I would have those conversations and it would be an hour long. And at the end of the hour, the kid, the parent, anybody involved still probably wouldn't know that they were an alternate. And Sherry, what she taught us is exactly what you just described. And she was like, well, here's what I do with my team at West Georgia. When we're taking somebody off the floor, I pull them in, put my hand on their shoulder. Hey, Zach, we're going to take you off the floor and make you an alternate because this, and this is what we feel is best for the team. So I need you to work on these things. So you go over there. We're going to continue working on this. If you'd like to talk to me later, I'd be happy to help you and talk this through with it. And 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And done. It wasn't disrespectful.
2 minutes and more effective. Yeah.
It wasn't disrespectful. It wasn't ugly. It wasn't, and I was like, wow, And I'm sitting here trying to make
just
somebody feel good. And all I did was kick the can down the road and not give them a clear path of what was actually happening. So, and honestly, what it was, I was being dishonest with them. I never, I never thought of myself as
that's a case of letting tact rule the conversation.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's an easy thing to do and an easy habit to fall into. And it's by and large ineffective and a time waster.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's wonderful.
In the moment, right? Sure.
Yeah, sure.
I love
Goodness, man, I could talk to you all day long over all these things, but unfortunately, I got to tell a dad joke now. So I think it's dad joke time, right, Stace?
It is. It sure is.
All right, we love our dad jokes. So here we go. Here's a good one. Did you know milk is the fastest liquid on Earth? Milk is the fastest liquid on Earth.
Did not know that.
It's pasteurized before you even see it. Boom, boom. We love our dad jokes. Make sure, send them to us. If you got a good one, send it our way. You can submit those on our new website, themotusedge.com, or DM us on our social media at Join Modus. And with that, we're going to take just a second and tell you a little bit about Modus.
Owning a gym doesn't have to feel like you're pushing the bus uphill alone. Join Modus, a powerhouse community of gym owners who share, support, and grow together. Inside the Modus Vault, you'll get ready-to-use templates, fresh resources, and exclusive industry discounts. Plus, your membership includes 2 seats at the Modus Business Expo in Nashville every year. 2 full days of growth, leadership, and networking, included at no extra cost. Ready to level up your gym game? Join Modus at joinmodus.com. That's JOINMOTUS.com. All right. Are we ready for some rapid fire questions?
I am ready to make these not rapid fire.
All right. Usual. So we are, this is kind of our running joke, Jeff. So we ask these like funny questions just to get to know you. It just kind of breaks up the podcast a little bit. And they're never fast, even though we call them rapid fire.
If any of them involve pop culture, it's going to leave me behind. I fail miserably in that category.
They do not. So you're good.
You're safe.
These are kind of more this or that type of thing. So would you rather have great hair or great teeth?
Oh, great teeth.
I agree.
Love it.
I agree.
I guess you would, Casey. I did that. That was in your honor, by the way.
I appreciate it.
Not your teeth are, by the way.
I think your teeth are linked more to your, a bald person can be healthy. It's if you've got oral issues, then it can lead to
I feel like as a female, my hair is kind of important. So, but I also would want to have good teeth. So I'm not really sure. Like, that's a hard one for me.
You don't want to have hairy teeth. I'll tell you that. So
no, you don't want hairy teeth. That is for sure. Okay. Would you prefer camping or a luxury hotel?
Take one look and guess.
I'm guessing luxury hotel.
There you go. Yeah. My camping days are in the rearview mirror.
I love it.
There might have been a time I'd have said otherwise, but I'll take a hotel.
I love them both. Love them both. No in the middle for me. I went over this on another podcast. Like, put me out in the middle of the wilderness with nothing, and it's me, a backpack, and a tent, or put me at the Ritz. Like, I don't want it. I don't want it in between.
The sound of being out in the wilderness with but it's just when I'm there, it's just not as enjoyable as it used to be.
It's hard. It's hard.
I think luxury hotel for me all the way, for sure. Would you rather go skydiving or scuba diving?
Skydiving.
I don't know, because I'm terrified of heights. So I think I might have to say scuba diving.
I've had the opportunity to go skydiving. It's just not, my daughter's done it. A couple of my kids have done it, and they loved it and said it was a great experience. And I've just never really had that desire to do it. Have you done it, Jeff?
No, I haven't.
He's like, I'm going to sign up after this podcast, though.
It would not. You say I'm not afraid of heights, and I'm not afraid of risk. I've just never jumped out of an airplane, but it hasn't appealed to me. I used to jump off the garage roof, and that was a thrill. So yeah, I guess an airplane over scuba diving.
I think you should do it.
Funny.
I think you should do it.
If you could time travel, where would you go and why?
Oh, golly. There's a line of Jimmy Buffett song. You pick the century, I'll pick the place. I'm struggling with either. Boy, I'll tell you what, I'd like to have been, and I'm an apolitical kind of animal, but I'd like to have been in and been involved with the founding fathers as our country was being founded, the Constitution. I think that's certainly
that would be really cool.
Yeah.
I think you could have been helpful knowing how you create systems and what you've built. I think.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'd sure love to have been a mouse, in the room just to listen to it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah.
Man for all seasons, inventor, businessman, a philanthropist, just a polymath, a genius in many areas.
That's a good one. We
awesome.
haven't had that one. So
I almost said Thomas Jefferson, but I think I would relate more to Benjamin Franklin.
I love that. I do want to take just a quick second, Casey, before we take our question from our listener, because our conversation kind of turned into it was a fabulous conversation, but it was more philosophical and I loved it. It was great. But I do want to let our listeners know, if they don't know about Kids First Sports Center, it is one of the largest, if not the largest, multi-activity sports center in the United States on 15.4 acres with 183,000 square foot facility. Wow. I love this. 606 parking spots, which every gym owner in the country is just foaming at the mouth for the 606 parking spots. And every parent that's listening is like, oh, that must be amazing. And I bet, Jeff, if I had to guess, you still don't have enough parking spots. You still have the same parking spot issues as everybody else, I would guess, because there's never enough parking.
We actually have some spillover parking with two contiguous operations. So we do have enough parking, but we do spill over into these other operations parking from time to time.
My goodness gracious, 20,000 plus people weekly coming through your doors. And so when, this conversation was incredible and you're just such a wealth of knowledge, you have experienced it all. You talk about training staff, leading people, building businesses. I'm sure there's not much in our industry that you have not seen and witnessed. And I just didn't want to wrap up. We're getting ready. Not that we're wrapping up the podcast quite yet, but I didn't want to get through the end without explaining that to people who are listening that don't know, your wealth of knowledge and insight is just truly incredible. And what you've been able to do is absolutely remarkable.
Yeah. And folks, Jeff and his team, they built this brick by brick, and when you hear his story, and some of the programs they're started, it was started with 6 kids, they didn't open the doors at 185,000 square feet and have 20,000 kids a week coming through. I mean, many of his stories,
right. 53 years of
pretty incredible.
53 years of growth. We've grown. One of the, if you will, one of our benchmarks that I'm most proud of is for 53 years, other than 2020 COVID year, which, by the way, we did well. But that aside, we have grown every year for 53 years. And when I look at that, and virtually any industry, that's a remarkable record. And I will say that's not by accident. I am deathly afraid of not growing. Growth is one stagnant. Growth brings.
Thank you for listening to the MotUS Edge. We hope you had a blast. Join us next week for more on business, leadership, and motivation. Subscribe and follow the show where you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our newsletter at joinmodus.com. The MotUS Edge podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.